Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Meaning. We haven't been here for a while because Willow and I had been out traveling and cruising. And on our cruise, we met this incredible person by the name of Nathan Landis Funk at the piano bar. And besides terrific music and what you would expect at a piano bar, we listened to one of his original pieces and were very impressed. And Nathan has agreed to come on and chat with us and share some of his insights. So, Nathan, we love to have you and tell us a little bit about yourself and your goals and dreams and ideal life.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Neil. It's pretty amazing to have, someone I just kind of met on a cruise take such a liking to my album, which has actually kind of been on the back burner a little bit since I've been on a ship so much cruising and seeing the world. But I am essentially built around this idea of like telling stories worth sharing. That's something that I even as a kid, like told my mom, like when I grow up, I'm going to be a storyteller, and then I'm going to give these books to my sister to read. And so I think my life, whether it's been through music or theater or film, has always been wrapped around that idea of like creating meaning and being able to share something that resonates with people. Um, and in 2018, I started a singer-songwriter project. I released an EP, and then when COVID hit, it allowed me an opportunity to lean into my original singer-songwriter music, and I had created a full album, which is the one that you got to listen to. And I had a bunch right here. So this is what they look like. And it was definitely a labor of love, but the album was built around basically these songs I wrote to help me with um, processing some like pretty intense changes in my life, especially spiritual ones. I grew up in the Mennonite tradition. My parents were pastors when I was really young, and then I got really involved in like the charismatic Pentecostal church. And then I went to a big secular university in Philadelphia where like all of my worldviews were challenged pretty intensely. And yeah, by my third year of college, I realized like, okay, there's certain things I have to let go of, and then I felt like I was lost at sea. So I came up with this kind of motif of being shipwrecked and then moving forward, and where do you go from there? So that's kind of what the album was um built out of. Some of the songs on the album are songs I wrote like right in the midst of some of the biggest parts of that shipwreck. Um, and so I think since that time, I've just continued that journey of like wanting to share hope and goodness and comfort with people. It's uh, so as far as tying it to my future goals, I haven't done a ton as far as like performing of my own original music. And my hope is to originally it was to create a musical audiobook integrating the songs into it from the album. But now it's looking like I'm going to try to do a one man or maybe a couple people like a stage version of this story. Maybe put it in a fringe festival. And I'm spending some of the holidays just thinking about how all this stuff is going to work. But that's kind of what my world is wrapped around. Yeah.
That's exciting. While we were walking around in town in New Zealand, we happened to call upon a couple of 20-something-year-old girls who were swimming, and they came back to the beach, and we started talking with them, and their aspirations were to become jazz musicians on cruise boats. You spent a lot of time in the last while on the sea, performing on a cruise boat. What's that like? What are some of the challenge? What's some of the rewards? What are things that you've learned from that?
Yeah, cruising definitely has been the biggest, um, I would say, challenge of my performance career, at least as far as the live performance aspect, because I was a theater major in college. Did not know really any Billboard hits. When I started auditioning in 2018, so it was a huge learning curve to adapt to the piano bar dueling environment, and then also to learn the repertoire. I took like 10 years of classical piano growing up. And interestingly enough, even like helping, I used to help lead worship in church a lot. And so the pattern of like chord charts is pretty similar in piano bar music. So that part felt familiar to me. But um, it took 2 years of auditioning to get in, and then I did get in finally February 2020. I started my first cruise contract, and well, then a month later I went home, and I wasn't back on a ship till a year and a half ago. I've kind of lost track of time. Um, but uh, I would say it's it's the classic scenario of like you have to really want something, to actually make it happen. I mean, I spent like 700 hours of rehearsing before I even like got my first contract. I just really I wanted to be on a ship, and I remember like the night before I expected to get a phone call from the company that does the hiring and casting. I literally didn't sleep the whole night because I was so like nervous and excited, like this could finally happen. um, but it's that classic lesson of like that hard work does pay off a lot of the time. Um, yeah, because now I was just reflecting last night. I literally, it's the best paying job I've had. I get to travel the world and make music and see these like literal like top bucket list places. I'm living the dream in a lot of ways, but it took a lot of intense work and commitment to get there.
So not only talent is important, there are a lot of talented people in the world, but hard work. And
Yeah, and I would say even with piano bars, especially, like I'm not the best piano bar entertainer out there, in the sense of like there are people out there who, have more vocal training, or who are better at soloing. But when it comes down to it, like, and especially with piano bar work, like you have to be willing to just like learn a ton of songs continually, and be willing to, I don't know, like adapt to a lot of different kind of environments, a lot of different kind of playing partners, or sometimes you might be playing by yourself because your partner's sick, like, um and just being able to like deal with crowds, to interact in the audience, like, I don't know. I found there's a lot of different skill sets you need to be a good piano bar entertainer. It's not just being able to sing, or not just being able to play piano. It's like the aggregate of a lot of stuff. And yeah, and hard work will get you, I think, to, it'll get you a lot of the way there. Maybe not the whole way there, but it definitely helps.
uh, so what is your vision, and what would you like to accomplish within the next 20 years?
Ooh, 20 years. That's pretty ambitious. But I like talking like that. I feel like I heard something once about like not making plans beyond 5 years because the future is so unknowable. But I I've always had this dream of fostering a lifestyle where I'm able to like as a career contribute to, original storytelling, whether that's writing, for like original songs, which has been, I think, at the forefront, or also, theatrical productions. Like, I wrote a musical in 2015, which was performed, and also was one of the greatest, creative accomplishments that I've had thus far. And I so I have at least one, maybe two other like musicals that I want to write. I think the thing that I am trying to figure out right now is, the balance of all these things and shaping um my future, because I realize some of my creative projects are not necessarily the ones that are going to make me money. The Sojourners project has certainly been like a really big passion project that at some point I, might want to tether to something that's more, that earns money. But I think, at the forefront for me is saying something that's meaningful. And sometimes to do that, need to just completely let yourself make it be what it is, and not turn it into something commercial. So yeah, for me though, I guess it's figuring out a lifestyle that allows me to continually create these stories worth sharing that I want to do, while also, earning a consistent income. Cruising has afforded me that opportunity, thankfully. But I think it's just a balance of like, okay, how much time do I spend on ships? How much time do I spend on land? But I've always had this. I think since I read Joni Mitchell's, I guess it's not her autobiography, but it's a portrait of Joni Mitchell, I think is what it's called, Reckless Daughter. I was thinking about, her Laurel Canyon community in the 1970s, where she was just surrounded by collaborators and creatives, and they would go over to someone's living room and just have a jam session. And um, I want to be in that kind of community consistently, where we're just all coming up with content together. And hopefully making a living somehow doing it. So it's you're catching me in a phase where I'm figuring out the logistics of some of this right now, because for so long it was just like I want to get on a cruise ship and I want to sail the world, and now I'm like, oh, I guess I've done that now. Well, what's next? So it's probably not as concrete as it maybe would have been a couple of years ago, but it's a great question for me to be thinking about right now as we go into the new year.
Well, I feel that Sojourners is a great album, and we'll talk more about it. But maybe we can think of money as a byproduct and not
Yeah.
the goal. If you're
Yes.
helping others and allowing people to have joy and meaning that they weren't before,
Yeah.
um, that's the goal. But you want to do that
Yeah.
for as many people as possible. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about Sojourners. After we got home, I of course explored and Googled you and listened to a few of the songs on YouTube, and then I bought it and downloaded it on the app Bandcamp, which I highly recommend, and listened to it a whole bunch of times while I was doing holiday cooking, and it just it's amazing. It's a beautiful, very uplifting and very deep album at the time. I highly recommend that anybody who listens to
Thank
this
you.
or watches this find a way to listen to Sojourners. Um, it's deep. It has interesting ideas about faith and hope, but it's a beautiful melody, beautiful lyrics, and what's more important is very uplifting. Um, Several times during my lifetime, I've had kind of dark nights of the soul, and actually, I've shared this with people. And in 1991, things were so bad that June that I was contemplating suicide.
Mm.
And if I had been able to go back in time and play Sojourners, I would have changed my mind right off the bat.
Wow.
It's uh,
Wow.
it's beautiful. So
Wow.
tell us more about how the album, the idea of the album, the songs, a little more detail, please.
Sure. Yeah. The songs were all written before I even really was contemplating making an album. Whereas I think some people are like, I'm going to make an album. I have to write songs. Um, the album, I think, kind of came out of necessity in a way, in the sense that especially during COVID, we were all, kind of sitting around, and I was trying to figure out like, how can I contribute, to something that, feels in alignment with what I want to do in my life. And I had also spent a lot of time, during COVID, because obviously, like I was on a ship when COVID hit. So like when we went home, I was just like, okay, I have no plans. I don't really know what else to do. I spent a lot of time just diving into like, why has my life gone the way it has? And I'm an avid journaler, so I read like every single journal entry I'd written from like 2005 onwards, and just really retracing the steps of my journey in faith, and why did why did I choose to do this? Why did I choose to do that? And kind of putting some of the pieces together that led me to like where I was that day. And I just through that I realized like, wow, I've written a lot of songs that have helped describe various aspects of this journey. And I obviously had a desire to share those songs, but the idea just coalesced. Well, why don't we just like make a full album? And the album was meant to be a companion to this musical audiobook where I essentially share this story of essentially of my life up to that point, even though I think I'm too young to write an autobiography, but um uh to at least share like I don't know the journey of someone who really was deeply involved in the charismatic Pentecostal church, and what happened when I tried to take some of those teachings as literally and practically as possible and apply them to my life, and kind of realize that all fell apart. And when we're talking about spiritual stuff, like it's never enough to just like write about it, because we're not essentially just talking about like the written word. It's like there's a spirit to it, and I feel like that's that music is a huge component of that. Like when we're in church, we have the worship music, and so that's why it felt very important to both share the actual story, but also like the music that comes with it to capture like the spirit of this journey. And so I actually wrote this whole musical audiobook. It took me like 6 months. This was maybe 2020, and integrated my music into it. So someone could just like listen to it kind of as a podcast in a way, but it was meant to be like a whole book. Um, I wrote, I think 7 or 8 drafts of it, got some feedback on it, and then, started working in the album component. I think I initially had planned for the album to be done like June 2021. And then I was going to release the audiobook after it. But like most creative projects, you should probably allot to have it spend, be like 5 times more expensive and take like double the amount of time that you allot for it. And that was definitely the case with Sojourners. I didn't release it till December 2021. And by that time, I had gotten pretty involved with other, like I was starting to get gigs again. And I just realized also like looking at the book publishing industry, like, and just getting enough feedback on it, I was like, okay, I don't think this book idea is quite ready. And so I decided to kind of lean into the singer-songwriter aspect of it a little more. And I've kind of been dithering about like, okay, what is the next step for this project? And so that's why the this fringe show one-man musical thing has come up a lot more. But yeah, I mean the album in and of itself was such a big it was scary, honestly. Like some of those songs I wrote, I really never thought, especially with like You All Pursue, and I would say Go Along Your Way is the other one. Like I literally wrote those songs like for myself, and I don't think I had ever planned to maybe share them publicly. It felt very personal, and very like, yeah, very much about like my own experience at the time. So I think there's a Neil Gaiman, or no, I think it's a, yeah, if yeah, Neil Gaiman quote that said like, if you don't feel like you're like, you know, walking down the street naked, like you're probably not doing enough. Or the Brene Brown, if you're not a little bit nauseous when you're done sharing, like you probably didn't show up like the way you should have shown up. And like the idea of sharing some of this stuff made me feel like frightened as anything. So I figured maybe it was a good step for me to share some of this music and see where it take me.
Well, absolutely. The quotes you just gave me, I think, are very, very precious, and I'll share those quotes with my wife. Um, any other? Yeah.
Right on.
Um, just one last question. I'm convinced that you're going to be someday pretty well known, and a lot of well-known artists have succumbed to addiction, possibly because the recognition they get and the adrenaline and the dopamine, when they're on stage and they have all these admirers
Yeah.
surrounding them, and then when they have to go back to everyday life,
Yeah.
it's a real letdown. Um,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
would be an antidote to that, or or even better, a vaccine against that kind of
Hmm.
problem?
Mm, that's it. It's a great question. And I think for me, it comes down to what your purpose is. Like, why are you pursuing being a songwriter, or why are you pursuing something that gives you fame? Because if it is just because you want recognition or because you want to be affirmed by other people, that's not really a good foundation. Um, and at least in my life, I've tried to, even from growing up, from this whole faith journey I've been on, like seek after something that's deeper than just affirmation from other people. Um, it's been about something about these deep things in life that we all have questions about that give us meaning. And like I've had a lot of, I don't know, my thoughts about like the Bible and stuff have changed a lot, but there's still certain verses that I still feel like I'm centered around. And there's this in Psalm 73 verse 25 and 26. It's actually in the bonus song of my album. It's like, whom do I have in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. And for me, like, that's what I want my life to be about in some way, shape, or form. That there's something beyond these tangibles. Um, and I think if we don't have that grounding in some way, shape, or form, yeah, we do get lost in the addictions. And thankfully, I have some wonderful people around me that are also really grounded and not just about the fame and fortune. And I think having that accountability helps too. But thanks for asking that question. It's a great one.
Yeah, that's profound. That when we have a focus on other things in our own ego,
Yeah,
that helps. It could be God, it could be our loved
yeah,
ones, a
yeah,
combination of all of it.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
that.
Thanks for
Um,
asking.
I think we're gonna leave that here. Nathan, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I mean, really just to give you a shout out, because I mean, you have been so intentional about, even just going to Bandcamp and, buying my album and leaving a tip. Like, that doesn't happen very much. And I mean, I've spent, quite a bit of time on ships, and I just don't get that sort of I guess attention and from folks. It's often, the cruise is over, and obviously the music I do on ships is for the most part very different than uh my singer-songwriter project. So the fact that you bothered to find my music and listen to it multiple times and give like really specific, kind thoughts. I mean, especially at a time when I haven't been as actively working on that music, it's been really grounding for me, and a good reminder to me of like, yeah, you have this body of work and this thing that you're deeply passionate about, and to feel like that resonated with you in some ways was really encouraging. And I am definitely going to be using that as fuel for the coming year and in what I want to do next. So shout out to you and to Willow for your support and care.
Thank you. That makes me feel really good. But you performed for 12 out of 14 nights on that cruise.
Yeah.
Of all the nights, at least while we went to many of the performances, it was the one song that you sang that was your song that you wrote that kind of won us over. Say, hey, this guy is more than just your regular piano bar guy. So
Wow.
we appreciate your time very much. All
Wow.
Your time is precious. We all have the same amount of it, and it sure goes by really fast. So, in that, I'm going to say thank you. You'll see in the notes a way to connect with Nathan. I highly recommend Bandcamp. You can get the same album for $3 less than on iTunes Store, and I think it's a wonderful app and website for aspiring musicians and writers and whatever. So thank you again, Nathan, and all the
Awesome.
best and good luck in your next cruise.
Thank you, Neil. We'll catch you again soon. Take care,
Bye.
everyone.